Everything you are about to see in this video is a stem. We've been talking about stems throughout this interactive lab, and you've found out that stems always have something. They always have nodes. And so that is how I know that even a potato is actually a stem. These little things that maybe you've called eyes in the past, those are actually little nodes. And so the spaces in between them, in theory, are these dense sort of squat internodes. It's just that this type of stem happens to be found underground, unlike a lot of the kind of normal stems, if you will. Now, not only is the fact that it is found underground kind of strange, but another thing that's kind of strange about it is sort of the shape of it. Notice that it's a very robust stem relative to sort of a narrow stem that bears leaves. Yeah, the point of a potato, for relative, from the plant's perspective, is to store, namely to store nutrients, specifically starch. So this type of modified stem is called a tuber. It's got those buds sort of all over it. And a single plant can have lots of these tubers underground. Now, these are definitely for storage, but they also sort of act as a way for these plants to propagate themselves. So they sort of double in function. They also act as asexual reproduction. Ground level was approximately right there in this picture on the left. This expanded part, it was underground. This part right here was underground. What this actually is another stem. This is an expanded stem that's underground. So in that sense, it's similar to a tuber. Also, it's for storage, and namely starch, mostly. But notice what's happened in this picture on the right is somebody has done a longitudinal section, sort of butterflying open, sort of filleting open this structure. And notice that inside it's sort of all more or less one tissue, except for what you notice is it's just at the very top. So that's the part that was connected right there. It's just at the very top that you see any sort of growth. So namely here we see a stem growing, but we can imagine that stem was at one point a bud. And so we see a bud at the top of this structure, or we see new growth from the top of this structure. And that's what makes this different from a tuber. This is called a corm. C-O-R-M. Corm. Kind of goes hand in hand with tuber in a way, because they're both underground storage units that are stems. It's just that a corm is sort of held vertically and it's got the apical bud on top. All right. Stem. And notice how I'm drawing sort of beyond what you can see in this picture. It's because it goes underground. And so it's kind of hard to take pictures of it. This one on the far right as well. This is a stem that's elongate, and it's sort of running along the top of this potted plant. But imagine it goes underground, and maybe it's like connected to those ones over there. It goes just under that surface. And over here, this is a fern where this stem has just gone underground so much that it is just spilling over the pot. So what I'm describing to you is another modified stem. This time it's called a rhizome. Rhizome, now this time, maybe it's a little bit for storage, kind of depending on the plant. But I think the main point of a rhizome is sort of propagation, is sort of getting themselves to a new place. So this is lateral stem growth that's underground. And so in this picture, this is also a rhizome, and I only know that because it's dirty. I could tell that the person who pulled this up, like, this is all kind of dirty here. So it was underground. Now, you'll see, since it is a stem here, we also kind of have some roots growing off of it. That's cool. Maybe this rhizome started off as a plant that was sort of like this, and then as the rhizome was growing, it was able to shoot out sort of a whole nother plantlet, if you will. And by plantlet, I mean a whole nother shoot and root. Cool. In theory, that's a clone of this one on the right next to it. Now, this type of stem modification is similar to a rhizome, but it's above ground. Notice, like the rhizome, it is forcing lateral growth. but this time it's above ground. So if you've ever grown strawberries, you already know about this thing. This is called a stolon. They're often referred to as runners, but I think a more appropriate botanical term for general botany is stolon. These also produce a stolon because it's just an above ground lateral stem, and this time it's also sort of shooting out a little plantlet at the end. So really, the point of this, it appears to be propagation. Notice in this one up here, the stolon is elongate, and then there's a little plant. And then we've got another stolon and another little, I'm calling it a little plantlet. Like a pig and a piglet, a plant and a plantlet. Right? And it just so on and so forth. And at every little junction there, it might have a whole set of leaves and a whole new stem and roots. So, asexual reproduction, this is actually much more, might be more energetically efficient than sexual reproduction, which includes a flower and fruits and sometimes. This is a very, very, very special thing. What we have going on here is not what it looks like. I'll help you out with what it sort of looks like. It looks like we have a stem here, and then, we've got a couple of leaves. 1, 2. And then maybe in this picture on the right, it appears as though we've got a stem here, and we've got some leaves. Well, this might blow your mind. Even just talking about it myself, it blows my mind. Yes, this part is correct. That is the stem, and actually so is this. That's a stem. But that thing that looks like a leaf is also stem tissue. And up here, these things that look like leaves, and by look like I mean they're broad, they're flat, they're totally green. It looks like a leaf. It's actually a stem. Here's how I know that. Well, if what do we know about leaves? Leaves have axillary buds at their base. That's where branches grow. Well, here's the thing. The axillary bud is always sort of above it relative to its attachment point on the stem. And actually, this little piece of tissue right here, there's another one right over here. That's the true leaf. This, on the other hand, is the stem that is derived from the axillary bud of this little leaf. It has already grown and expanded, and it's just so happens to be in the shape of a leaf. It also has a similar function, the same function. It's doing photosynthesis. So here's another reason why I know that these things up here that look like leaves are actually stem tissue. Here's a close-up of one. And this whole thing that I've just circled in magenta is, again, it's the stem that's acting like a leaf. And I know that because we have a flower right here. This is a little tiny flower. A flower comes from an axillary bud. Nowhere else. Flowers always come from axillary buds. They are shoot modifications. This is all mind-blowing. I know. This is heavy stuff. But since a flower is an axillary bud, check this out. There's its leaf. Axillary buds are always subtended by a leaf. Well, there it is. It's that little part that's coming off of the leaf-like stem. Okay, finally, here's the term. This is called a cladode. Definition of a cladode is simply a stem that is acting like a leaf. Now, I want to be clear about something. I also hear this called a cladophyll sometimes. Crazy. Here's some more examples of cladodes. Maybe you've heard of a prickly pear. Yeah, a prickly pear, even though it's sort of those broad, these broad things, they're broad and green, they remind you of leaves, they're actually stems. The leaves are busy doing something else. More on that in a minute. These are all just more examples of cladodes, the photosynthetic stems. We know that because some of them are bearing flowers. The only thing that would be bearing flowers is a stem, because stems are the things that have leaves and axillary buds and nodes. Okay. So here's another modification I want to talk about now. And we can see it still in the prickly pear down on the bottom right. That's an example of a cladode. It's also an example of succulence, of having a succulent stem. So succulence is the the way to say that. Bad writing, sorry, I'm getting used to this. Succulence implies that this structure is juicy, it is filled with water, it is fleshy. All right, here's some more kind of classic examples of succulent stems. Now, a lot of times succulent stems, like in the cactus, a lot of times it's also photosynthetic. Interesting. So, two sort of atypical functions of a stem. Photosynthetic, it has photosynthetic material, and also it's storing water, namely. So, if the stems are green, where are the leaves? The leaves are busy being anti-herbivorous. Sharp armaments. Right there. Cool. Moving on. Another type of modification of a stem that we might see is a tendril. Let me write that down. Tendril is sort of what you see right here, this dangly, kind of flimsy, filamentous structure. Here it is up here, really curly, cute, and twisting itself around some structure. Here too, these are literally twisting themselves, curling themselves up around a nearby stem. So this is a way for the plant to help itself kind of climb up, in theory, closer to the sun, right? And I know that this is a stem because, well, at least this one in this picture, here's a leaf, and then here's the structure we're looking at. It's coming from the axillary bud. All right. Now, here's the truth about tendrils. Anti-herbivory sort of sharp armaments. This is a way for a plant to deter large herbivore, well, any sort of herbivore. These are true thorns. In botany, it means something very, very specific. A thorn is a modified stem that is very sharp and pointy. And here's how I know that this isn't just like a modified leaf or something. It's a modified stem because, check this out, it has nodes. They're really hard to see in this picture, but there are small kind of other leaves with their little axillary buds coming off of that. And then, oh, this is about to get really meta here because that thing has nodes. Well, check this out. This thorn in this picture is coming from a node on the other kind of part of the stem here, on this main stem. This, that I'm highlighting in green right now, is the petiole of a leaf. It's folded back so you can't see it in the picture, but imagine it looking just like this leaf up here. And just like this leaf up here has an axillary bud, this leaf down here too had an axillary bud. It was right there, and then it grew and became this large thorn. Okay. Another sign that you're looking at a thorn is if it has literal branches on it. So this one here, it's branching. That's a sign that it is a branch. Only stems branch. Leaves don't branch.